What is happening, my moments out there? Yeah, we got a great show for you tonight. Great show. Nobody knows anything tonight. Brought to you by Faith, the God brand Faith. No piss jugs tonight. We are brought to you by Pea Soup. It's good. It is green New Deal, liberal people. We're back. You know, we're gonna cut to our discussion tonight. There is a definite purpose to it. Please enjoy. We've got Brian Lay, Chris, Nessia, and a surprise pop in. Let's start the show. Let's go.
You sacrilegious motherfucker.
It's a purpose week, dude. Well, actually, I saw The Exorcist this week. And
the original?
Huh? Yeah.
The original?
Yeah, and it really got me going, dude. I like that movie. It's a good movie.
I don't think I've ever seen it all the way through.
It scares Vanessa, though. She doesn't like it. Intro spiel. Nobody knows anything. We got Brian Lane tonight. We got Chris tonight. We got a woman here. Showed up in my garage. Vanessa. So, purpose. But I have a disclaimer. I'm gonna go through. If you guys stop me, you can. But I'm just gonna plow through this. My disclaimer, though, is I'd like to start tonight's episode by letting all of you know that I am now speaking on behalf of God. He reached out to me last week after he's spoken with Mike Hill, state representative in Florida, regarding some kind of baby bill thing. And then God called me up. So just to let you guys know, everything I say is divine. So basically, you can't challenge me with anything like logic or reason or anything like that, because then you're working for the devil. So here we go. Purpose. Last week, Brian and I discussed sports, and I was ready to make our discussion last week a kind of fight between sports and art. And I think Brian was too. But the deeper I got into my spiel, the more I realized that sports and art, at least broadly, we seem to be doing the same thing. Then Brian and I talked, and it seemed to reaffirm this idea that art and sports both do this thing that provides a sense of purpose for us. So now this is a very individual sense of purpose, right? And the experience of being part of something like jiu-jitsu for Brian, or a band or an artwork for me, it gave us both a sense of individually subjective meaning or purpose. And I wondered about how these ideas of meaning or purpose might operate on grander levels. Purpose as a societal project, as opposed to purpose as individual subjectivism. Is purpose always individually subjective? Are there societal frameworks for collective purpose that unite individuals? I think there are. But last week, I realized that our discussion of these concepts in terms of individual perspectives and the world around us were extremely limited to our own lives because they were very personal. We were talking about ourselves, you know? So I did, what any thinking person does to thoroughly vet a concept, Wikipedia. I found that determining the purpose of, say, existence or any given phenomena or a particular action was something that humans have actually thought about for quite some time. There are a buttload of ethical frameworks for looking at just how we understand and analyze purpose. I'm just going to talk about two. Teleology and deontology. Now, warning, though I do speak for God, many, many people speak about these subjects way better than I do, and they don't even speak for God, so that might be a plus too. But here at Nobody Knows Anything, we believe that some people know something, and I'm just not one of them. So here is what I have to say. Teleology, very broadly, is kind of like, you can think about it like this. The end justifies the means philosophy. And they look at purpose, by the purpose of an action or a given thing is based on its consequence. So no matter what actions or behaviors lead up to an end, if we determine that the end is good, then it was all good. The whole thing is good. It was purposeful. A basic example of this, let's say we use a bunch of kids to make cheap pants or phones. At the end, we got some nice pants and phones, super purposeful. We like the action. You might call it utilitarianism because we had a beneficial end. Now, the other view, deontology, is more focused on behavior that led to an end rather than just the consequence. The root is duty, and the ethical framework here, the root deon is duty. Ethical framework, again, is that it just simply looks at the behaviors and not just the consequence. So in the phone, pants, kids example, we might say, oh, we're looking at the process of the kids making the shit and speculating about whether or not it's ethical for children to do that. But since I'm God's rep, let's talk about God. teleological religious arguments also imply, teleology and religion go together. So it's like we see a complexity in the world around us. We see similarities in the shells. We see cells and eyes doing things across species and animals. And some people say all that similarity means there must be a designer, an intelligent designer. So intelligent design theologically is another ends justifies the means kind of reasoning, because you're saying based on all this complexity that we see in front of us now and similarity, we assume that there must be an intelligent designer. Then in response to that, there's a lot of criticism, right? There's this dude called Darwin. I don't know. He had this theory thing where, and he said this thing about teleology and divine design or whatever it is. He said, I own that I cannot see as plainly as others do, as I should wish to, evidence of design or beneficence on all sides of us. There seems to me too much misery in the world. I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent, good God would have designed this. He says it's an echmenidae. It's a creature that eats caterpillars. It's a zombie. It infests the caterpillar and takes over their mind and it kills them. So he's like, how could a good God make this creature that eats caterpillars? And how could a good God make cats that play with mice? What's the purpose of, he's like, not believing this. I see no necessity in the belief that the eye was expressly designed. So he's saying there was no purpose in designing the eye other than that it just evolved that way. Nobody said humans get the eye because it looks like God's eye. So obviously science, capital S, seems to poo-poo intelligent design and some respects of teleology. Science seems to recognize we're at a place that analyzes reasons and possible explanations to allow us, without attempting to give us like a grand narrative like religion does. And for instance, teleological-based grand narratives are eschewed by, say, the postmodern attitude, where teleology is viewed as reductive, exclusionary, and harmful to those whose purposes or stories are diminished or overlooked by grand narratives. And this is where I got interested, because grand narratives might be clean and good for storytelling, right? There's a complexity to reality that seems to prove that purpose and meaning will be different for all of us depending on who we are as an individual perceiver. And this all makes me wonder, again, what's the difference between my individual ideas of purpose and ideas of grand purpose that religion, politics, and ideology place on broader society? Almost there, guys. And when I imagine the different realities people experience, not only in our country, but throughout the world, that are much more difficult than mine, I wonder about their quest for purpose and how it might be different than mine. But since I'm God's representative, let me switch gears, talk about abortion. Maybe a teleological perspective on abortion would look like this. At the end of the day, you're killing babies, so we must legislate however we possibly can to stop babies from dying, because these unborn humans should be able to fulfill their purpose. The end goal is we should not have them be killed, so let's make legislation, stop baby death, let them live. End goal sounds good, right? But what about an individual's experiences that might be bad in spite of that wonderful end goal of not killing babies? What if you could know factually or historically that banning abortion would lead to more botched abortions, in which the baby's still dead, obviously, maybe, and there'd be more women suffering criminal penalties, maybe more deaths from both mothers and unborn children, and folks making money off of it on a black market? For certain pro-life advocates to ignore that shit, to me, is the epitome of the ends justifying the means perspective, because it's teleological purpose, the end, rather than looking at how we get there or what happens because of that end. So these folks that are opposed to baby killing, they're so opposed to it, and reflecting that faith being opposed to baby killing in legislation that it doesn't matter if more babies and women suffer or die, as a side effect of that legislation. But wait, God is telling me to say more stuff. I don't think God likes that. So now I'm going to talk about somebody that God also brought to existence, a doctor that we all love.
Peterson.
I'm paraphrasing, but I remember part of 12 Rules for Life saying, in essence, I liked it. It said, basically, just really a paraphrase, but be virtuous, basically look into yourself, see who you are, find your purpose, shine brightly so that you can impact the world positively, and maybe once you have figured out that responsibility, do that for yourself, you'll be able to inspire others to do the same with that wisdom. And I really like that. And I don't hate this man like some of our guests. Kevin's not here. I don't think Brian really thinks I hate him, but Kevin thinks I hate him. And I don't hate him like some of us might think. But I think it's related. My criticism is related to our topic. Because JP, if we describe him if I describe him favorably, he's in essence fighting to free people so that they can live their more authentic lives, contribute to a flowering of authenticity and liberty in individuals throughout the world. And that all sounds cool to me. But then there's that one claim to fame. We always bring it up and harp in our text group, the Civil Rights Bill. So the full text of the thing is online. You can read it. I can read it. It's there. It adds transgender folks into the Canadian civil rights laws. I often check to see if anyone's been put in jail or fined for inappropriate pronoun use. I haven't found a really, really compelling case of anyone really being hurt by the amendment, which only really added 4 words to the law. And this gets us to wonder about the ways in which perhaps JP arrived at this position. Like, what was the purpose for this critique? I think he'd have you believe that the bill is dangerous because the bill is dangerous. It's a free speech thing, and fighting it will result in a better end for all of us. You know, and maybe it's just my deontological curiosity, but I have questions about how he determined his purpose for attacking it that way. But God said go back to abortion, and I have no problem with anyone having the notion that abortion is icky. I don't think when I'm daydreaming that I love abortions, but if it's part of your public or political platform to bash women who get abortions and advocate for legislation against them, when we know that that type of action creates more suffering and death, I feel like that's a discrepancy. If your problem with abortion is a loss of life, this legislation contributes to more of that loss of life kind of type of stuff. But then back to the transgender community. You know, some people go around thinking in their heads that these folks are insane or something. And I don't have such a solid understanding of science biology that I can say that they're impossible beings, but I do know that like black trans men are murdered at enormous rates because of their gender identity. And then, trans women, I'm sorry, she corrected me. And the community also experiences high levels of suicide, homelessness, and unemployment. And research indicates that social stigma contributes highly to these suicides and experiences of suffering. And my thing is, if we know social stigma is doing this to a community, and we see that that was the reason for implementing the bill, does railing against the bill as an obstruction of free speech help this community that's been disaffected or affected negatively? And maybe it's not about helping that community. Maybe it's about free speech. But no one is having their free speech demonstrably violated, especially not anywhere near the levels that members of the trans community's rights, their ability to fulfill their purpose or even live, are clearly violated or obstructed due to social stigma. Because it's zero casualties for free speech folk, but transgender community is offing themselves and getting murdered with no jobs while they sleep on the streets. So I think what I perceive as uncool about JP, not the other stuff, I love the inspiration stuff, but I don't like adding to perhaps social stigma that exists under the guise of protecting freedom and liberty. I think that part's fucked, because that stigma is what affects these individuals' freedom and ability to live or experience their purpose, perhaps. You know, how is that empowering or self-reflective, or in connection with the idea that we're all here to find ourselves and our purpose deeply so that the world can benefit from our true self-awareness of ourselves and that wisdom? You know, what about the purposes of these trans folks? Is their purpose less than is it less important than a theoretical free speech issue that's never manifested to harm anyone? You know, I mean, they can't access their authentic selves maybe as easily as you or I, and maybe that's because we don't have the same struggle. What's the purpose, man?
That was an excellent rant, Drew.
So I'm sorry, you guys. I took a long time, but share your note. Whatever. What do you guys want to say? What are we talking about?
Well, I was wondering if you can maybe like synthesize that down, or.
What I was wondering when we were talking about purpose last week was just about, because we were talking about purpose in terms of it would help us. It would help us, but sports and art, it was helping us to kind of find our most authentic selves, I thought.
Right.
Kind of the nature of our conversation. And I wondered, do some people, you know, does everyone's experience of their own purpose, is it like mine? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I guess it's kind of like what people discuss as a privilege thing, you know? Like, did I come to my purpose because of the nature of my environment, you know? Like, if I was born in, like, Yemen.
So you feel like people are trying to stifle trans people's ability to, like, attain their purpose or, like, live out their purpose?
Well, if there is a stigma, you know, which means like society sort of sees them in a certain way that they perceive as negative, and we see data that says, like, you know, they're killing themselves or they're homeless or shit's happened to them, and it's related to that stigma, it makes me think that would affect like their ability to sort of reach their purpose, you know? And if we got parts of the community saying like, well, they're not even real people, you know? Or you know what I mean? Like, or it's we don't, the rights that they put in, Go
Do
ahead.
you think that people shouldn't be? You think that people shouldn't be allowed to express that opinion that trans people are mentally unstable or
I think people can
they're
express it. And my thing is that the legislation itself does not disable people from doing that. You know, like you can, just
well?
the same way that hate crime legislation here doesn't mean that you can still want to say the N-word or have those beliefs. You know what I mean? Like it's just that like there's a line, a certain line that it's now compelling to consider that in a criminal prosecution, you know?
Doesn't it mean like if you're added into civil rights that you're just basically protected, so you can't be discriminated against or harassed, like in like
workplace,
like work and housing and school? Like it doesn't say like if you use the wrong pronoun you're gonna get fined or jailed. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just
Well,
like,
I think that's the whole point of the bill.
but that's not what the bill says. And like lawyers and the Canadian bar and all these folks say like it's a misreading of the bill to say that it would affect people's free speech in that way, you know?
because what we want to interpret the bill is one thing, but what the bill says is what the bill says.
While we're on Peterson, I've got a question. I got a question for anyone that's read Peterson. So from what I understand, isn't one of the rules like don't mess with kids who skateboard?
Yeah, that's one of the
Oh,
chapters.
but isn't also one of the rules before that like don't let your kids do anything that would make you dislike them?
Yeah.
What if you really dislike skateboarding and skateboarders? What are you to do? Do you let your kids skateboard?
I don't know, Bill.
I was just puzzled by that. I saw the 12 rules today for the first time, like all laid out, and I was like,
Yeah.
What do you do if you have a skateboarding kid and you don't like skateboarders?
Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw that out.
But that's my worry though about the things, because we're talking about that bill and you're like, Brian, you're like, but you know, I think the problem is that it's compelled speech and that's an issue, but like all these lawyers and all these folks, like that's not.
Well, yeah, if that's not the issue, then there's not an issue.
But why? But that's, to me, that's why I want to call him a grifter, because I'm like, it seems like he's very adamant that is the issue, and it seems like he gained a lot of, like, to me, it's almost like, ooh, there's this fear in society, people are uncomfortable about this is provocative attention, you know, like now
he's uncomfortable with it too.
grift.
I don't know. I feel like that's like you know, people trying to align, like Cedar trying to align Shapiro with white supremacists. It's like the same sort of like paranoia, some sort of like conspiracy theory
Is there
nonsense. Like,
in your estimation, is there no white supremacy issue in the globe or the country? Like, is that
of course not. Of course, it's a very fringe movement, though. It's not. But everyone is now labeled alt-right. That is like right of Karl Marx. They're labeled Nazis. They're labeled white supremacists. If they're,
I don't think that's true. I just don't get that perception at all. If anything, like the what do they call it? That Overton window in our culture, as far as what it is acceptable to be accepted in normal political discourse, has shifted far to the right, to the point where like people who were Republicans for years in the Senate in the 80s and stuff, who were considered pretty straight line Republicans, are now considered to be too liberal to be Republicans. You know, I mean, it's pretty strong consensus that the political Overton window has just shifted right in the past 40 years and haven't really shifted left since Reagan. We haven't gone back since Reagan. I mean, I believe we're still really in the Reaganism, like in the shadow of Reaganism.
You've got Trump openly supporting LGBT people.
You know what he just did? He just said that all the United States embassies should be discouraged abroad from flying the LGBT flag. He's the first president in days to say, if you're at a foreign embassy, do not fly that flag.
Well, why would they fly this rainbow flag instead of the American flag? That doesn't make sense to me.
Pride Month.
Make it so they don't exist. He doesn't even want to recognize that they exist as people.
It's with it, and
That's ridiculous.
It's not instead or replacing it.
It's not to replace the American flag.
Let's just validate.
Fly it with it. Like we fly a Christian flag too. We fly all these different flags. Like,
I believe that the administration was trying to make it so that it's like they don't even exist, and trying to make it so that it's harder for them to get health care because of the fact that they're not one of the binary genders. So I mean, because he maybe while he was running in the campaign voiced some support for the LGBT community to get elections, and he had that guy who's gay, Peter Thiel or whatever, speak at the convention. Like the policies that he has been implementing haven't been doing anything to support them at all. So that's why I just laughed so audibly, because it was so outlandish. I couldn't help myself.
I mean, I don't see the oppression of gay people, of LGBT people.
Did you ever see it like in the history of like the gay rights movement and like Stonewall like riots and all of this stuff, where like not even like 20 years ago, it was like fools are getting murdered, or it was illegal. It was, again, social stigma that like we don't have to think about because we're not gay. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of have to like put yourself into that and empathize with that a little bit. And that's why we have pride. That's why we have these moments of awareness, or that's why Black Lives Matter was a thing. It's not to poo-poo white people or straight people or anything like that. It's just there's a considerable amount of oppression and devastation that these communities have experienced, and this is sort of a reparations. It's an immense healing. It's healing.
Yeah, I mean,
not even reparations. It's just saying that, hey, we exist. We have a right to exist and participate in society to the same degree as everybody else.
And I don't think Trump would disagree with that statement. But
well, why is he implementing
policies
which make it harder
to fly the rainbow flag with the American flag?
Well, what about making it harder to be a member of the military? What about making it harder to engage in other areas of public society? Harder to go to the bathroom?
Why can't you be in the military and be transgender?
One of the first things that Trump did was he took away like provisions that allowed for them to get medical treatment because they're transgender.
Wait, going back,
like the policies that Trump has implemented, like, I mean, I don't have them all off the top of my head to rattle them off, but they've definitely done nothing to increase the rights of transgender people, which are subjugated. Now, you don't believe that they're subjugated to begin with. So I guess you don't.
That was my curiosity, Brian. I want to clarify. So you don't believe that the LGBT community has ever faced oppression?
Of course not. I just don't think that there's this.
They've never experienced oppression?
No, dude, no. I mean, of course they have.
Okay, yeah, they have.
Okay, because earlier you said that you don't see any oppression with the LGBT community. So
no, I don't think there's currently a concerted effort now to oppress the LGBT community. I don't think like Trump and Pence are stewing in their office like, oh, how can we oppress these people? How can we cast them out of our society? How can we keep them down?
Make sure I'm getting you. You're saying historically yes, but currently no.
Right.
Okay.
So even
if you want to get down to it, I don't think that the real people who hold the power in our society really probably don't give a fucking rat's ass about transgender rights, but they do love to use it as a way to garner up reactionary populist support against, so like that's why they're like, we can't vote for these Democrats because they're gonna and all this culture war shit. They like the people who are actually in power don't care about the culture war, but it's a way to get the plebs, the people who don't really have much power, who are not part of the ownership class, who don't own any stock portfolios. They now have something to where they're, but I'm going to lose my privilege as a white male, so I guess I'm against losing that privilege, so I have to vote for these Republicans because they'll keep the gays out of the streets.
And if I'm a gay person or part of the transgender or LGBT community, I know that there are members of Congress, there are members of the United States government that do hold those beliefs, So it's like, it's not like it's just made up. Like
Steve King vocalizes it.
Vocalize it, man. Like.
Okay. So are we talking about purpose or?
Well, I think that my purpose, a purpose that I find that gives me a little bit of something to live for other than just sheer novelty is helping people who are historically subjugated. And that's why I'm passionate about law and getting a license to practice, is so that I have a tool to where I can be more effective in helping the subjugated be less subjugated and have more freedoms and participation in our society.
So that's what purpose and meaning is for you, Bill. And I want because everyone's idea of purpose. Andrew talked about other people's idea of purpose, Scientology, Deontology. I just want to hear Brian, what's your purpose? No.
How did I miss when you put that in your mouth?
Yeah, usually you only miss when I put stuff in your mouth because you're asleep.
And you're gonna make me throw up right now.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell. Go ahead.
Okay, someone give me their. Don't mind this over here.
Brian was talking. Brian.
So I guess my idea of purpose goes along with Bill's to a degree, but I would start off with the purpose of life is to know yourself, so that you may contribute to humanity in a beneficial way. I think, and me and Drew were talking about this last week, that there are several avenues to get to know yourself. And they can all be considered an art form of one kind or the other. Sport, music, meditation, making movies, manual labor, teaching, service of any kind, really. And I really want to emphasize that, like, to be able to, like, know yourself, you need to put yourself in a difficult situation, to see how you react in these difficult situations. And you can begin to reshape who you are, cancel out the negative aspects of your character.
So you're not saying that you have to, like, first know yourself, learn about yourself, know yourself, and then you can act to, like, help others. You're saying that you can do them. You, like, learn about yourself as you're helping one another. Because at first I got a little worried that you were talking more about that old Peterson, clean your room, bucko, before you try to put other people's houses in order, which I have my issues with. But you're saying you can help other people while you're getting your room in order too. Is that what you're saying? That, like, you can learn about yourself while helping others or doing service?
Or was it like?
Or do you have to learn about yourself before you engage in the service?
Yeah, like purpose is like.
I think it's pretty important to, like, know your. Sorry, go ahead, Vanessa.
I think what I'm understanding you is that you're saying that your purpose is getting to know yourself, knowing yourself, so that then you can, like, shed light and that you can be of service to others.
Right. It's like.
Then you said the process of knowing yourself is.
But don't you worry that you're gonna get stuck, like, trying to learn about yourself?
You said the process of knowing yourself is having to put yourself in difficult situations, right?
Right.
And can you give me an example of a difficult situation that you're talking about that would help you know yourself, or anyone to know themselves?
I mean, like, personally, jujitsu, right? Or, like, you can do something like meditation, like you sit with physical or mental, yeah. Hey, kitty.
Or both, or one or the other, or does it matter?
I mean, ultimately, it's all mental, right? If you don't have control of your body, I feel like it's pretty hard to have any control over your mind. But because, if your body's sick and your body's aggravating you all the time, then, like, it's a little bit hard to. But even then, like, I guess you can. If your body's sick and, like, hurting all the time, then you can see how you react to that. You can see what your character is, and you can try to react in a positive way.
So how much, don't you worry though that you're going to get a little too stuck trying to learn about yourself and know yourself to where you're kind of falling into paralysis through analysis of yourself? Paralysis through analysis. Paralysis through analysis. Paralysis through analysis. Paralysis through analysis. And you never actually end up going out to help others because you never feel like you've truly know yourself well enough to help others, rather than where I feel like part of the process of learning about yourself and putting yourself in those challenges, like trying to help somebody with this thing, taking on a task, like taking on this fucking, for me, like a pro bono case. It's
so
really
like
out of my field.
when my process of knowing myself is through jiu-jitsu and is through my work, right? So, like, I am affecting my sphere is like the people that I interact with every day at jiu-jitsu or at work, like with my clients or with the people that I work with. And I can observe how I'm interacting with those people and try to try to be the best Brian that I can be. Try to like, essentially you want to contribute good to humanity. You want to be a good person. Like you want to contribute to the general will.
I guess I'm wondering, like, because that's why I like my job, and now why I'm like so just like gung ho and like super like, you know, stoked to just become a fucking badass attorney in a few years here. And because I feel like I have that power. Like this gives me like power to fucking help others like even more than I could if I'm just a paralegal and I'm, you know, like I have been, and I'm just interacting with people. Yeah, I can do good, like be a nice guy at work, but I can't get somebody justice and relief from a court. Like, and that is like working towards increasing my ability to help those people and constantly increasing my ability and effectiveness and competency in helping those people gives me that greater purpose, you know?
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's a net good if you use that power for good. But if you defend like a murderer or somebody, then like, you know, if you're only in it for the money, right? Then
well,
like,
I just said that my purpose is to help those who have been historically subjugated get more freedoms and participation in society.
Well, historically subjugated, I think you should judge it on an individual basis. You can't just say like, oh, this guy's black, this person's transgender, like they're obviously in the right.
I think you're off my page here. What I'm talking about is that in general, like I find fun and enjoyment out of the study of law because I feel like it gives me purpose, and that purpose is the ability and the power to help people seek relief from the courts.
Well, you said first you say people, and then you say people that are historically subjugated.
Yeah, typically those are the ones I want to help. Like right now, this pro bono case with a Muslim woman, and we're going to possibly be able to overturn some bad California precedent like other states.
If she's innocent, then obviously it's a net good that you're helping her.
And I have a question. Brian, I don't practice criminal law. We don't do criminal law, so we're not talking about innocent or guilty. We're talking about getting something she's owed. But like, I think you're just misunderstanding. Okay. You're trying to narrow it down into like this one case. I'm talking about my purpose in life is trying to help those suppressed. The way that I'm finding to do that and make money is through the practice of law.
And then all these fools who have devoted their lives, just like Bill is doing in some respect or another, who believe that there is a reason to advocate for different groups of people that are still being affected by systematic oppression, whether or not you believe it's there, are all those people who are contributing to that. Like the prison says, I get that we have a culture war going on, like Bill was talking about before, where people become very aggravated and want to fight. But do you think that all of like that advocacy for these folks, like the LGBT community, different minorities,
women,
are all of those people are misguided and have not looked into themselves fully?
I think people should be viewed on an individual basis.
So what about like someone who is struggling with like stigma about like transgender?
So there's no systemic racial, there's no overlapping race. Because if you believe that we shouldn't have protected classes, you're basically denying that certain classes of people have been oppressed in history. If you deny one, you have to be denying the other too, because we only have protected classes because the other one exists, because they're historically oppressed.
Right, so if that civil rights legislation is annoying in Canada, do we take away all of it?
We're talking over each other. This
civil rights legislation is annoying and problematic. Do we take away all the civil rights legislation that is just an add-on to for black people, for gender, for religious discrimination? Do we take it all away?
I want to hear what Chris has to say. He hasn't said
wait. We just asked you like a question, like you know, because you're saying that there aren't protected classes, or that you want to treat everyone as an individual, and you don't like this idea of protected classes in our judicial system.
Dude.
But if that's such, wait, let me just finish. Because if that's the case, then you have to be denying the fact that there were ever classes of people who were oppressed. And it's like you're doing that.
If the system oppresses people based on their group, then that's wrong.
And then they should. And if that causes problems, should we take measures to fix that, like protect them?
I said it's wrong.
But I asked you, should we then take measures to correct that and fix it? You just said
it's wrong. You should fix it. Does that?
But who would take the measures to do it? Like, who would make the decisions, and
Like maybe
like,
the
what would they
government
be?
regulate, like designate certain classes of people that you can't discriminate against. Like you can't discriminate somebody based on their gender, their religion, their race. Like we
Are
have.
we happy? Are we happy with how the government's like handled everything else so far?
Well, like we can't. We're just talking about. I'm just talking about as a member of a democratic society, and I'm only a member of the Democratic Society of America right now. So that's all I'm really focused on. We haven't really expanded. But I'm just saying that I just don't understand how Brian says he wants to treat everyone like an individual, and it seems like he doesn't want to even consider, and by doing that, it seems like he wants to ignore the fact that any of these groups of people, because he doesn't want to look at groups, he only wants to look at individuals, so it almost negates that groups have ever been oppressed.
You don't want to ignore anyone, do you, Brian?
No, I said if groups are being oppressed, that should stop.
Okay.
And so we are trying to stop that with laws that you seem to be against.
Because of free speech or something.
Like what specifically?
Like the Canadian bill, C-16.
Do you think that thing would have gotten like any traction?
I don't think speech should be policed.
It's just adding them to protected classes, like Bill's saying.
Yeah, it's just expanding the class to include transgender people.
There's nothing in there that says go out and police people's speech. You know, it's not in the bill text.
I feel like the only reason you should be scared of that bill or against that bill is if you want to discriminate or harass transgender people. If you want to discriminate them and say, you know what, I don't want to pay them that much, or I don't want to hire them. Like if you want to do that, then you should be afraid.
Yeah, if you want to
was there not bills against that already?
If you're just what?
Was there not bills against that already? Like
they were not included in the class. They protected them against that type of discrimination. That's the point, Brian.
What they did was say because the civil rights, like black, like gender, like race.
Yeah, you don't have the right to refuse service based on that. And people do it all the time. Dude, people get fired all the time because they're black, but they get told something else.
Yes. So
it happens all the time. And it's totally legal, but if you say it's because they're black, that's when it's illegal.
All the bill is saying is like, just like people who are pregnant or people who are black or people who are disabled.
And now it's saying, and now people who are transgender.
Also, because they've been discriminated historically. So now the same thing that you can't do to these people because of these different things, now you can't do that to transgender people.
Because before that, you could just say, we don't serve transgenders here. We have the right to refuse service to you.
Hire them, or we're going to pay them lower, low key, and say that it's because of this, but it's really because I'm not cool with your gender.
Or your expression of it. You
That's
know,
why I think it's silly when people want to get mad at it. I'm just like, so then you just, if you're against that bill, you're not mad about it because of free speech. You're mad about it because you want to have hate speech or you just want to discriminate or harass.
And if a dude got famous based on mostly that because he has some good self-help skills, but that's a big reason why he gained awareness. I don't have a problem with him helping men or whoever. I have a problem with that misreading of a bill to like get people's attention. Grifting. And we have like 1 minute left.
Really?
1 minute left, yeah.
Oh.
2 minutes.
Talk about purpose that much? Just kidding.
Well, it's all what's the purpose?
I say.
So, Chris, what's your purpose, and what do you think the purpose of life is?
It changes for me. Like it goes back and forth thinking about purpose and meaning. I think when I was younger and growing up, I would think about it like these big goals, you know, like big things that I had to do or like things that I had to accomplish, you know. But as I get older, I think that like, I think about community a lot more, you know, even in the smallest sense, like roommates and people like directly around me.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I think that just by focusing, I was talking to Andrew earlier, whenever I'm just like thinking about myself and like what I have to get done and all my problems, I'll start thinking about somebody else and like how I could help them in any like small way. And I think that's slowly turning into like what my meaning in life is going to be, you know.
Can I end it with a Peanuts joke that relates to that? So like there's this famous Peanuts joke that I love where like Lucy comes up to Charlie Brown and she's like, what's the meaning of life, Charlie? It's like the meaning of life, or the purpose of life is to help others. And then Lucy says, well then who the hell are these others and who are they helping? What are they doing? I always like that.
I like your idea, Chris, of purpose because it's something that can evolve and change. It's not this stagnant permanent thing. It changes with the way that you evolve and that you're growing. It seems like as you grow with the world, so does your meaning of purpose, and it's going to expand and evolve and change.
And with this, the conversation is going to die in less than a
Oh,
minute.
So we all want to help other people.
Yeah, I think we just have different, to the degree, in different ways, and I wasn't sure how. I think we just have different, maybe ways or degrees in which we want to help people. I feel like Brian's is more in just like he wants to be a better person in his interactions with people. Chris, I got more as like wants to help people in his more local community, and with me, obviously, I broader.
Seems like we all want to help in some way. We just disagree what certain types of people might actually need